How do you feel about that?
It's nice, but like it's nature and it's whatever. But like sometimes it's too much.
How tall were you at 14?
7'4", and then I grew 7'5.5", and now I'm 7'6.5", almost 7'7".
When you think about being 7'6", do you think of it as a blessing or a curse or both?
Blessing.
A blessing.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
All right, folks, I know exactly what you're thinking. Who is this giant, and why is he making those kids look foolish, right? To be honest, I thought the same at first glance too. But then, this is certainly not some overage dude bullying his way through amateur basketball. This is 18-year-old Olivier Rioux, the 7'9" giant center towering his way to achieving his dreams of playing in the NBA. Now, who is this dude? How is he so good despite being so tall? And most importantly, is he really the next Wembanyama? Well, come along as we take a look at the world's tallest teenager and his venture into the world of basketball. But first, remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more of everything basketball. Born on the 2nd of February 2006 in Terrebonne, Quebec, you'd be pleasantly surprised to find out that Olivier Rioux' height and interest in sports aren't much of a coincidence. You see, his father, Jean-Francois, is a 6'8" photographer and former volleyball player.
So what does it mean to play in such a historic game like this?
For me, it's kind of just an experience, feel how everybody is, and right now, like, enjoy it. Around 13 years old, I trained myself to athleticism and running.
While his mom stands at an even more impressive height of 6'9". This somewhat impressive gene combination already meant Rioux was destined to be tall. But nobody knew just how tall he would grow to become until the signs began to unfold. At age 8, the young boy was already over 6 feet tall, which is just about as tall as a full-grown Steph Curry. Crazy, right? Now, at such a height, it certainly didn't come as much of a shock when the kid started picking interest in the beautiful game of basketball. After all, he's from a typical sports family. Perhaps he had gotten his inspiration from his elder brother who plays basketball too. But it all didn't matter because once he got on the court with his age mates, he had an automatic advantage. But even then, he wasn't done growing. By the time he got to 6th grade, he was already approaching 7 feet, which meant he was playing basketball with kids barely half his height. I mean, it was just ridiculous because he wasn't just way taller than all the other kids, but with the reduced hoop in elementary level basketball, he was almost as tall as the basket. Just picture this, a kid who could dunk with both feet on the ground. That's just how easy it was for Rioux. But it wasn't just the fact that he could score without even stretching that made him an asset. It was also the fact that his wingspan made it almost impossible for opponents to go beyond him or even get a shot at the basket. And well, you don't even need to be present to know who got all the rebounds. That's how tall the kid was. But guess what? Even then, Rioux wasn't done growing. Of course, the NBA has recorded its fair share of tall players. However, it's pretty rare to come across players who exceed the 7'5" mark and still manage to maintain just about enough athleticism to become professional basketballers. We're talking names like Sean Bradley, Yao Ming, and a few other players who managed to be mainstays in the NBA despite their towering sizes. Oh, and there's obviously no talking about tall players in the NBA without mentioning the ever-so-talented Victor Wembanyama, who also happens to be the current Rookie of the Year. However, unlike Wemby, who's only 7'4", Rioux is already 7'9" and still growing. Heck, this kid was already taller than Wembanyama at the age of 16 when he measured a stunning 7'5" and made it into the Guinness Book of World Records as the tallest teenager ever. Like most players with similar heights, Rioux initially struggled with the fast pace of the game. He was basically only effective from around the rim, where he just stood between opposing attackers and the basket, or snatched both offensive and defensive rebounds. However, he's clearly putting in the work and training to become both physical and athletic. He's also improved his ball handling and overall shooting accuracy, as it is now very evident in his all-round gameplay. Now, even the pundits, who initially predicted that the young lad would fade away like some giant prospects before him, are now accepting that this youngster may just have what it takes to play in the big league. Of course, at this point, it's still difficult to predict just how big of a prospect Olivier Rioux will turn out to be. After all, he's still fresh off committing to Florida and is yet to test his skills in the NCAA. However, the young lad is clearly not new to competitive basketball, as he's not only featured in various Canadian youth teams, but also had international spells where he represented the Real Madrid youth teams, among others. Now, how's that for experience? As if that's not enough though, the rising baller has also represented his country Canada in the World Cup at under 16, under 17, and under 19 levels respectively. True, these competitions are not the NCAA or the NBA for that matter, which means the teenage talent still has a lot to do to get to where he has always dreamed of being, but there's absolutely no denying that the obvious improvements in his game mean he's well on course to not just make it into the NBA, but also rank among the top prospects. Yeah, we've heard a lot about how Rioux is tall, plays basketball, and so on and so forth. But what you and I and the rest of the world really want to know is just how good is Olivier Rioux, and what impact does he have on the court? Indeed, one thing we can say about the current crop of giant youngsters in the NBA, in the persons of Wembanyama and the Memphis Grizzlies' new recruit, Zach Edey, is that they can play. They have developed skills that make them much more than just the big players protecting the rim, and that has certainly influenced how we view tall players. For Rioux, well, he's certainly no Wembanyama yet, and he's probably still as unrefined as they come. But even at that, his impact on the court is already becoming more and more evident with each game he plays. Now let's start with the basics. One of the most telling advantages for tall players in basketball is their incredible wingspan and how well they use it. You can imagine trying to bypass a player who literally has a covering of the entire basket. It's just almost impossible, right? Luckily, Rioux has been really impressive in this aspect, emerging as a valuable asset on both ends of the court. We've seen him block shots without even getting up from the ground, pick up rebounds that others can't reach, and execute a dunk by just stretching his hands. He's also an easy target for his teammates to pick out. I mean, you just put the ball up in his direction, and you can rest assured no one else is getting to it. But apart from the obvious advantages, Rioux is also becoming more impactful with his passing, finishing, and general game reading. The way he draws multiple defenders to himself and then picks out an open player to get a free basket is very commendable. He's also become more physical, with an obvious muscle increase that highlights the fact that he's been putting in work in the background. Tell you what, with giant strides like this, no pun intended, you really can't help but feel this kid might just have what it takes to become an elite baller in the NBA. But then, while he's already showing clear signs of improvement, there's no denying the fact that he's still got obvious weaknesses in his game. You see, while tall players are often seen for clear height advantages they embody, their weaknesses do not really go under the radar either. Of course, some elite ballers like Wemby and Kristaps Porzingis manage to keep these weaknesses at a minimum as much as possible. But for young players like Rioux, it's always so evident. For one, the tallest players are never the most mobile, and it often takes them that much more time to get up and down the court. Also, the taller you are, the higher your center of gravity, which automatically translates to less balance and an even slower change of pace. This means that while tall players are assets around the rim, they can become liabilities on other parts of the court, and young Rioux is definitely not immune to this problem. He's definitely not the slowest player out there, even though it usually takes him a couple more seconds to get in his strides. Ultimately, we've seen him struggle in transition plays, and faster players can easily use their momentum to get the better of him 1v1. There's also the issue of getting to loose balls that fall below his waist region. Of course, with a wingspan as extended as his, you can always count on him to dominate the air. However, he's almost always as helpless as a baby when it comes to picking up low rebounds. And that's another obvious weakness. But then, the biggest concern for future suitors and potential drafters will be his higher likelihood of getting injured. Now, while Rioux has enjoyed a pretty much injury-free amateur career so far, There's almost no escaping the possibilities, especially for players above 7'5". Plus, if he does eventually get into the NBA, the intensity of the league may just see him get fatigued that much sooner than average-sized players. While it's definitely not all roses and unicorns for this young blood, you can argue that the future doesn't look bleak for him either. As a matter of fact, he has already shown that he can improve his game, and at just 18 years of age, he certainly has a lot of time ahead of him to transform into a top baller. No doubt, one thing is sure, and it's the fact that he'll keep breaking records with his insane height. I mean, he's already poised to become the tallest player ever in college basketball, and with his journey looking very much likelier to bring him to the big league. He could also beat Georgi Murasan to become the tallest player ever to play in the NBA. So, folks, remember the name Olivier Rioux because it's one we might be hearing a lot of in the near future. Oh, and don't forget to smash that subscribe icon so you can stay tuned to this youngster's progress and get more exciting videos about your favorite NBA stars.